Hi everyone, Crista Cowan here with another episode of The Barefoot Genealogist. I am coming to you live from Salt Lake City today, where I am attending the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little later in the presentation, but I just wanted to let you know if there's any video issues, it's because I'm on a wireless network in a hotel, and hopefully this goes smoother than the previous recording rendering did. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about why people come into family history, what motivates them, what gets them interested, how some of those reasons change over time, and then we're going to talk specifically about genealogy goals. We'll review some of the goals that I set last year, some of the goals that I've set this year. My purpose is not to have you set the exact same goals that I set, but just to give you an idea about how setting genealogy goals can help propel you forward in your research, how it can help interest other family members in what you're doing, and how it can help keep you interested and engaged in your genealogy. I know sometimes I get bored with some of my family members, the living ones and the deceased ones, but sometimes when I have a goal that I'm working towards, it helps keep me engaged in that family or helps me feel okay about switching to another line to work on something else. So that's what we're going to look at today. Let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk first just about some of the reasons why, excuse me, some of the reasons why we get into family history. Everybody comes into it for a different reason. If I was to ask a room of 100 people, I'd probably get 100 different answers. But really, all of them kind of boil down to the few same kind of ideas. One reason people do it is because they think it's just going to be fun. They saw a commercial or they got online and did a little searching and it just was something that was fun for them. And if family history is not fun for you, you might be doing it wrong. It is fun. It's a lot of fun, and that's what keeps some of us engaged. Some of us are just curious about those who came before. There's this natural curiosity that a lot of people have that just leads them to want to explore and uncover and discover and dig in and learn things. Some of us are curious about connections to people we've heard about. We heard about that Native American ancestor. We heard about how we were related to George Washington or whatever it is that got us, sparked our interest enough that said, hey, I want to check this out. Some people get into family history because they want that important family history connection for their children and their grandchildren. They want to be able to share those stories now with their children and grandchildren. Maybe they want to write a book and leave that as a legacy for their grandchildren after they're gone. Some people want to compile a family health history. Some people want to honor those who came before them. All of these are just kind of some of the basic foundational reasons why people get into family history and why people keep doing it. You may have come in for one reason and stayed for another. Your reason yesterday may not be the same reason today. That's fine. The idea is just to kind of start to wrap your head around, here's all these different reasons why people do family history, and there is no one right or wrong answer. There's a lot of reasons, and the reason that you identify for doing it is going to direct the goals that you set, or the way in which you proceed in this hobby. So let me just review with you one of my goals from last year, just to give you an idea for how this worked for me, and again, maybe spark some ideas for some goals you can set. One of my goals last year in family history was to keep up with what's new. And so those of you who've spent time with me know I do a monthly What's New at Ancestry.com episode of this show, and that helps, certainly. I also set some kind of, keep up with what's new was the big goal. The little goals underneath that helped kind of direct my attention. One was that I wanted to check the new content list every other week. So I just set in a little alarm in my calendar every other week that I would pop up, and it would say it's time to check new content. And so I would come over here to Ancestry.com, and I would come into the card catalog, and I would sort this list by date added so that all the new stuff was at the top of the list. And then I would just go through that list. If you hover over any one of these databases, it tells you the date it was added. And so I could just go through this list until I got to the previous set of content that I had looked at. Let me put this in a little bit of perspective for you. Ancestry.com has about 15 billion records on our website. 2 billion of those records were added just this past year. 2 billion records, billion with a B, representing 67 different countries. So that is a lot of new content to keep up with. But it was totally worth it because there were some really cool discoveries to be made, both in my own family history and just in family history in general. So one of the other goals that I set was that I wanted to dedicate time to understanding that new content, not just read the list and say, oh, that's interesting, but to actually understand the new content and then do some searches in those new databases to see if there were records that had to do with my family. I'm going to apologize right now for my coughing. We're in the middle of an inversion here in Salt Lake, which if you don't know about is horrible air quality. Anyway, so I would come in here to each one of these new databases as they came out. And maybe I was interested in a specific area even, and I can type that in and it will bring up a list of, again, sorted by the newest stuff at the top of the list, new content that I might be interested in. Before you start searching, if you spend any time with me, you know you always want to scroll down and read the source information and the database description. That's one way to become familiar with the particular set of records. The source information will tell you where Ancestry obtained those records. In this case, we got them from the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. The records that we obtained were on microfilm, and so that might be important information to know how long ago these records were microfilmed. And, excuse me, their title for this particular set of records is the Society of Mayflower Descendants in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Applications for Membership. Now, we rename all of our databases because we try to follow a standard database naming pattern, which is the name of the state or country, the record type, and then the year range. And so their catalog title for it is this, and our catalog title for it is this. So that helps you connect the dots between the two. Below that, you're going to see a database description, and that's going to explain why the records were created. This might come as a shock to you, but no records are created for genealogical purposes only. As a matter of fact, most all records aren't created for genealogical purposes at all. They're created for legal reasons, or because of historical research, or because a specific law required that a census be taken, or a law required that a marriage be recorded, or a law required that, whatever, or a church required that a burial be recorded, or a christening, or whatever. Most, actually, of the records that are created for legal reasons. And so we have all these great tax records and land records, and they're all created for reasons other than genealogy. And understanding why those records are created are going to help you understand more about the lives of your ancestors. It's going to help you understand more about the records themselves. It's going to help you understand what other records you might use in conjunction with this to discover more about your ancestors. So I always read the database descriptions, and in some cases even we'll go and look up this repository, see if they have an online catalog that gives more descriptions about this information. As a matter of fact, very often Ancestry will provide a link to that organization directly in that database description, where you can then come and see if they have more information or articles or posts about that particular set of records. If not, maybe they have information about who the experts are in those particular records, and then you can contact them if you want more information. All of that is prior to searching, prior to actually diving into the records and seeing if any of them relate to my family. Dedicating time to understand the content will help you search better, and it will help you understand the record you're getting once you finally find it. One of the things I've learned in my own research, and very much by watching others' research, is that we don't always analyze the records we have correctly, and we don't always squeeze every bit of juicy goodness out of them that we could get because we don't understand the record. So that was one of my goals for last year, and I think I did pretty well, keeping up with new content, dedicating time to understanding new databases. Another way that I kept up with what was new was that I selected 5 genealogy bloggers to follow last year. And And then I read their posts, and I tried to read them every day, and sometimes I was successful with that, and sometimes I wasn't, but I always got caught up, usually at least on a weekly basis. I'm not going to give you the list of my 5 genealogy bloggers because your interests are going to be different. There are people out there who blog on every possible conceivable topic, and if the topic you're interested in isn't being blogged about, maybe you can look at starting a blog. As you go through the learning process, share what you're learning, and that's bound to help someone else. So let me just share with you just some of the blogs out there. I know that Russ Worthington, who I believe is watching with us today, Russ does a blog on Family Tree Maker. So if you want to learn more about keeping up with what's new in Family Tree Maker, how to use Family Tree Maker, he's an excellent resource. I know that Judy Russell does a blog called The Legal Genealogist, where she explains in just beautiful, she's an excellent teacher. She explains very simply how the laws that were created at the times and places that our ancestors lived affected their lives and affected the kinds of records that were created. Another shining star in the genealogy blogger world is Genia Bloggers. Thomas McKenty runs Genia Bloggers and keeps a pretty exhaustive list of anybody who's blogging about genealogy. And so his website, geniabloggers.com, is actually one of the great places to go to get a list of all the other genealogy blogs and what they're blogging about. But that was a goal I set last year, was just to keep up with 5 specific individuals in the industry so that I could keep on top of what was new and what was happening in the industry. And then the final goal that I set in that keeping up with what's new category had to do with dedicating time each week to working on the mobile apps. Ancestry has mobile apps for Ancestry, for Ancestry.com, and for Find a Grave. And so I have a smartphone. I do not have a tablet, and so I have this tiny little screen, and I was a little bit daunted by that, but I persevered and I kept at it and actually discovered some really cool new things, some cool new features that I'm able to keep up with. And one of the cool side benefits of working on my phone is invariably one of my cute little nephews will say, well, what are you doing on your phone, or what game are you playing? And how cool is it to be able to say, well, the game I'm playing is that I'm uploading tombstone photos to Find a Grave. And then, of course, they want to know what that means, and I've engaged them now in this whole conversation. Or, I'm looking at our family tree online, and do you want to see? Here's where you are. And again, now I've engaged them in a conversation because I'm not just sitting at my computer or reading a book. I've got a smartphone in my hand, and that piques their curiosity. So being able to keep up with the technology not only is a benefit to me because I'm able to keep up with the technology, but also it's a way to engage younger family members, and that's proven to be a really fun benefit. So this was one of my goals from last year. I have now set 4 goals for this coming year, and my goals are a little bit more detailed. Like, I have very specific dates and measurements attached to my goal. I'm just going to kind of share the high level ideas with you. Again, the concept here is not for you to have the same goals I have. It's to spark your imagination about some of the goals that you can set and ways in which those can help keep you engaged in family history, ways they can propel your family history research forward, and ways in which you can engage other family members. So my big, hairy goal for the year is to write. I have let some of my writing fall by the wayside, and it's a skill that I love using, but that I found myself using less and less. So I've set some specific goals around writing. First is that I want to write more proof summaries and arguments as I research my family history and come to genealogical conclusions. If you've spent any time with me, again, you know how I feel about the genealogical proof standard. The genealogical proof standard has 5 parts, and most of us are good at 1 or 2 of them, and sometimes leave the others behind. And so I've been focused a lot this past year on making sure that I follow the complete genealogical proof standard, that I do a reasonably exhaustive search, that I cite all of my sources, that I analyze and correlate my information, that I let the evidence both speak to me and that I let the evidence develop. That's really important to me. And then that I'm able to resolve any conflicting evidence, which we all have all the time, And then the fifth portion, so reasonably exhaustive search, cite your sources, analyze and correlate your evidence, resolve conflicting evidence, and then the fifth step of that genealogical proof standard is that you write a proof summary or a proof argument, that you come to a conclusion. And that conclusion very often is just a scattered bunch of notes for me. And so my goal this year is to be more deliberate about writing proof summaries and arguments as I research and come to genealogical conclusions. Here's why I decided that this couple are the parents of this person, and then write that out. Or here's why I chose this date as the birth date and place for this individual. Or here's why I think these 4 people are his children. Whatever the genealogy question is that I'm solving, to just write a simple statement about why I decided what I decided, and then put that into my tree. For me, the easiest way to do that, the easiest way to write these things is just directly into the notes feature. So in Family Tree Maker and in your online tree, you have a notes feature, a research notes. And so I've just started writing my proof summaries and arguments directly into my notes. As the tree owner, even if my tree is public, I'm the only person who can see those notes. So if I wanted that to become more public, I can make it a story or a document that I attach as a media item. Or here's another goal I've set for myself, which is to take some of my more complex research cases and write them up as articles for genealogical publications. There are genealogy magazines. There are several large ones. There are state genealogical societies that publish magazines. There's lots of different places to get published. And so maybe if I'm writing up about a Utah family, I can go to the Utah Genealogical Association and submit an article to their publication, which is Crossroads. Or if I'm writing an article about an Ohio family, I can go to the Ohio State Genealogical Society and submit a publication, or submit for their publication. Or the National Genealogical Society, or whatever the organization might be, if I've got a case that might be pertinent to their audience. There's a couple of benefits of this. One is it helps me clarify my research. It also helps me quickly see holes in my own research. And then I submit that to editors who are not just language editors, but who are also genealogical editors, who can then quickly see holes in my research as well. So even if I don't get published, just the process of submitting those articles actually helps me become a better genealogist, because I get peer-reviewed information back about what I might have missed or conclusions I may have drawn that the evidence does not support. So it's a really useful exercise to go through that and to do that. I've done it a couple of times, but have set some specific goals about how many more times I'm going to do that in the coming year. And then I just love writing, and like I said, I've gotten away from it. Some of you may know that we announced last week that my show will be going to once a week instead of twice a week. And one of the reasons for that decision is because I wanted more time for writing. I wanted to be able to do more blogging, both personally with my own family history, but also for Ancestry. I got away a little bit from some of the Ancestry blogging, and I think that that's a really accessible medium to be able to write educational pieces, to be able to write some how-to articles, some different things to have available for you on the Ancestry blog that might be a little bit more accessible to more people than a video, 20 or 30 minute video. And so I want to be able to do some more just general family history writing in the coming year as well. Another goal I've set this year is to learn more about specific times, places, and laws. So one of the things that I have learned in family history is that if I do not understand the time, the place, or the laws that governed the lives of the people in my family tree, that I'm not going to have much success finding them or making connections between family members. And so there are some really specific things that I've put on my list that I want to learn more about. The first thing is the Georgia Land Lottery. So last year, Ancestry released a large collection of Native American records in conjunction with the Oklahoma Historical Society. As part of that release, I had the opportunity to do a bunch of research into the Trail of Tears, how all of those 5 civilized tribes ended up out of Georgia and Alabama and Florida and North Carolina, and how they ended up in Indian Territory. And the reason was because they were driven out by the government. And the catalyst for all of that was the Georgia land lottery. So the state government and the federal government wanted to sell off the land, but there were people living on the land, the Native American people, and so they had to remove them. Horrible situation, and I got very emotionally wrapped up into that research and writing some of those articles for you when those records came out. And then just recently discovered that I have a 4th great-grandfather and a 5th great-grandfather who benefited from the Georgia land lottery. And that's how they settled, and that's how their families grew, and how their industry grew, and how their fortunes grew over the course of several decades. And so I have this really mixed emotional feeling about this, and so I want to learn more about it. I want to learn more about the actual, early 1800s laws, the several lotteries that took place, how they worked, what determined who participated and who didn't. And part of the reason I want to learn this is not just so I understand those ancestors better, but because for one of those ancestors, I have yet to locate his parents. And I'm hoping that there will be some information that comes to light in this process that helps me to identify either where he came from, so I know where to look for his parents, or if they were involved in the land lottery as well. The next thing I want to learn more about is the New Jersey Quakers. This past year, Ancestry released the largest online collection of Quaker records. It is, in fact, it encompasses about 80% of the available U.S. Quaker records in existence, which is unheard of to have an online collection that large of any one thing. And I have done a lot of work in those records, looking into my own family in New Jersey who were Quaker. But I want to understand more, again, about the time, the place, and the laws that governed these people and the choices that they made, so that I can understand them better and so that I can make some more connections using those records in a way that maybe I hadn't thought to use them before because I didn't know enough, right? We don't know what we don't know. And this allows me to learn what I don't know so that when I look at a record, it makes even more sense to me and I can, again, wring more of that juicy goodness out of those records. Another learning goal I set this year was to attend the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy, which is where I am recording from today. The Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy is different than a genealogy conference. The Institute is actually a week-long course where you select a track and you sit in a classroom with the same students and the same set of instructors every day for the whole week. And there are a dozen or more topics to choose from. I think I mentioned, I'm taking the Advanced Evidence Analysis Practicum, which basically means every night we meet together as a class and we get a case study from a professional genealogist. We then have all day long to work on the next day to work on that case, to try to solve it and to discover evidence along the way and to follow the genealogical proof standard as best we can. And then we get back together for a couple of hours in the evening and with our class and our instructors, and we review the case, we review the research we've done, we learn what we did wrong. I have already done things wrong in the first day, and then we have the opportunity to discuss research methodologies and to learn from that. There are other courses who just meet in a classroom setting all day long. There's classes on beginning and advanced DNA, there's classes on beginning and advanced US research, German research, portions of the genealogical proof standard. I mean, there's an advanced genealogy methodologies class. That's the one I took last year. Lots and lots of courses available, and a really, really, really well put on event here at the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy. It's only Tuesday. We just started Sunday night. I've already learned so very much. So highly recommend that if you're there. And then I also will be attending several genealogy conferences throughout this year. Genealogy conferences that will be held here in Salt Lake, Roots Tech and FGS coming up in February, the Genealogy Jamboree in Burbank, California coming up in June, and in St. Charles, Missouri, in the end of August, we have the National Genealogy Society's annual conference. And Judy Russell, who is the legal genealogist, she teaches at almost every one of those events. And so my goal this year is to step out of the Ancestry booth at those conferences just long enough to attend a few of her classes so that I can learn more about the laws that affected the lives of our ancestors and the records that were created. So those are my goals about learning this year, very specific, and that's exciting. Another goal I have this year has to do with doing more with AncestryDNA. Specifically, I want to reach out to more cousins. I've tested both of my parents and my one living grandparent, and so I have these lists and lists and lists of DNA cousin matches. And sometimes it's really easy to see how we're related, and sometimes it takes a little bit more work. But because I have such an extensive tree, and because I've done a lot of descendancy research, meaning I know the names of the families that have married into my families as well, almost invariably, I can look at somebody's tree and I can tell how we're related. As a matter of fact, on my father's list of cousin matches, for everybody that's a fourth cousin or closer, with the exception of 2 individuals, I have identified exactly how every one of those fits into the family tree. And so I put that into my family tree maker file and I pat myself on the back and off I go to the next one. Well, what I haven't been as good about doing, I've done it a couple of times, but I want to do this with all of them, is I want to send a message to them and explain to them that I was able to figure out how we're related, and here's the information they need, and that if they would plug that information into their tree, and that I've got the evidence available for them if they would like to see that, that they could then have a leaf hint and they would be included in a couple of DNA circles and all of that information. I'm a big believer in genealogy karma, which is that if I willingly share the information I have, whatever information I need will find its way to me. And the more free I am with my information, the more readily that information comes back to me that I need. And so I want to reach out to more cousins, because I want to reach out to them, but also because I hope that when there's information that I need, that it will find its way to me as well. I also want to reach out to more cousins to collaborate. Where I cannot figure out that common ancestor, I need to be better about saying, hey, I've looked at this, I can't figure it out. Do you have any ideas? And maybe they have information that isn't in their online tree, or maybe they have information that they just haven't updated yet, or maybe working together, we can figure it out. So those are 2 of my goals around DNA. And then my final goal around DNA has to do with those people who have no trees. A lot of the people who are taking, there are people who are now taking the AncestryDNA test who do not know their biological families. And so they come to Ancestry to take a DNA test with the hope that they will be able to make some kind of a connection. And some of them, there's a lot of trepidation involved, there's some curiosity involved. I have a 4th cousin match who had no tree, and his wife, who administers the account, messaged me and explained that he was looking for his biological family. He was adopted. And I was able to work with that, and we determined one of the ancestral families that we were pretty certain he was connected to. And over the course of several months, we worked through his family tree and through his matches and my matches and some of our other matches, and we compared matches, and were able to, just this past week, identify both of his biological parents, all of his grandparents, and all of his great-great-grandparents. And providing him with that information has been absolutely thrilling, to be able to know that this is something we can do with family history. I just find hugely satisfying. And so my goal is to work on one new adoption or non-paternal event or foundling case each month, preferably those that are among my matches, but if not, I'll go looking afield for some as well. The last goal I have set for myself has to do with decorating my home, and that may seem a little frivolous to some of you, but stick with me and just let me explain. One of the things that I've discovered is that my family history is far too often locked up in my brain or in my computer. And I do have an online tree, and my online tree is public, and I do have distant cousins who look at it, but I've shared that tree with my parents, and they don't look at it very often. And I've shared it with one of my brothers, and I don't think he's even accepted the tree invitation yet. And yet I have family in and out of my home constantly. And so one of the things that I would like to do this year is actually print a large pedigree chart that I can hang on the wall in my home. I have one that I have a working chart that hangs on the wall of my office, but I want something decorative and something that people will look at. I do have family history memorabilia and things decorate my home now. I have pictures of my living family and pictures of my deceased grandparents, and down one hall I have this long picture. It's probably about 5 feet long, about 18 inches high, 5 feet long. It's a picture of the cavalry that my great-grandfather fought with in the war against, he fought against Pancho Villa, and the cavalry in Texas came up for some exercises, and they lined them all up on the field and took this huge photo. And it actually happens to be the day that my great-grandparents met. They met at that event. And so that's why they kept the photo, obviously, and now it hangs in my hall. So I do have some family history things in my home, and I get asked questions sometimes by my siblings or my nieces and nephews, but I want more. I want more things in my home, more things for them to ask questions for, and I just want to surround myself. I spend so much time and energy working on my family tree. I want to see the fruits of those labors, and so for me, that's going to be some charts for myself, and then hopefully other family members will request those for their homes. I also want to make sure I have pictures. I do have in my possession pictures of all 4 of my grandparents, all 8 of my great-grandparents, and most of my great-great-grandparents. I want to get those pictures framed and hung in my home as well. So those are my goals. Those are the family history goals that I have set for this coming year, the things that I'm going to be working on and focused on and trying to do better, not just because I need to be kept engaged, but because I want my family history work to move forward. And sometimes I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels when I get stuck at a brick wall, or when I'm, when I'm working on a particular family and I get bored with them or whatever. This is a way I can go back to this list and I can say, well, you know what? I can do this. And that will keep me moving forward, and it hopefully will enhance the family history experience for my other family members, intrigue them just a little bit so that I can start nurturing that next generation of family historians. That's all I have for you today. If you're watching this live, I will be on chat in just a few minutes. I want to hear about your goals. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment. Tell me what family history goals you've set for the coming year, so that I can help you meet those goals. I'll read through those and make notes to myself about maybe videos I can produce or articles I can put together or people I can put you in touch with that'll help you reach your family history goals for 2015. Until next time, this is Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.